Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Sapa Shawan Edwards, and I am the Director for Capacity Building and Communities at the Atlantic Council Cyber Statecraft Initiative. And on behalf of the Atlantic Council, thank you so much for joining us for today's event focused on building cybersecurity capacity in Sub-Saharan Africa. And through today's discussions, we'll examine the different ways that education and capacity building in Sub-Saharan Africa can support cybersecurity initiatives and the development of robust cyber policy, as well as create opportunities for the workforce. We're joined today by cybersecurity experts and practitioners from academia, government, civil society, and industry who will be able to showcase the different ways training and education complement efforts to bolster resilience and advance cyber policy on the continent. We'll also be joined by alumni of the Cape Town Cyber 912 Strategy Challenge, who will reflect on their personal experiences with the interdisciplinary competition and how it impacted their careers in cybersecurity and policy. Before we kick things off, I'd like to turn over to our partner and someone I consider a friend, Dr. Tendani Mulanga Chimboza. Tendani is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Town and the scientific engagement lead at the Cybersecurity Capacity Center for Southern Africa. Tendani conducts research focused on cyber resilience in society, digital ethics, digital childhoods, and socio-technical systems. She's very passionate about investigating aspects of technology that we use that unintentionally exclude or marginalize certain groups in society. And since 2021, the Atlantic Council and the University of Cape Town have joined forces to offer educational opportunities and interdisciplinary training to students from across Africa through the Cyber 912 Strategy Challenge in Cape Town. Tendani, I'll throw things over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Safa. A warm welcome to everybody that is joining us today. Today is all about getting more information about building cybersecurity capacity in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I believe that you will enjoy this event and you will really be inspired from the speakers that are lined up. I will take it back to you, Safara, and I hope everybody does have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tendani. So for our first discussion, we're delighted to be joined by experts representing higher education, industry, government, and civil society, including Professor Wallace Chigona, Professor of Information Systems at the University of Cape Town, Director of the Cybersecurity Capacity Center for Southern Africa, also known as C3SA, and Director for the Center on Information and Communication Technology for Development, also known as ICT4D. We're also joined by Charmaine Houvet, Senior Director for Africa at Cisco, Dr. Ifeoma Nwafor, founder of the CyberSec Policy Girls Initiative and principal partner and lead consultant at IEN Legal Associates, and Adam Smith, Southern Africa Cyber Lead for the British High Commission in Pretoria. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And for the folks joining us online, you can submit your questions to our panelists at www.askac.org. So on our first question here, just to kick things off, I'd love to get a sense from you that C3SA has conducted research and assessments that take a look at the maturity of specific countries to help inform the development of policies and investments that bolster safety and security online. What are some ways that you think that universities and research institutions can collaborate with industry and government to continue to gauge the capacity of governments, but also ensure that training programs translate that into measurable improvements for cyber resilience and the development of more effective policies?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that question. That's a very interesting question. Kind of looking at especially Sub-Saharan Africa, where the gap of skills in cybersecurity is big. Right? So, like many countries globally, the Sub-Saharan Africa is suffering from cybersecurity threats, and we've seen that many countries lack capacity and lack commitment to engage in cybersecurity. So the question on how universities can then engage with industry partners to improve the capacity for cybersecurity and to improve the security is pertinent. So what we need to do as universities and industries to work together so that we develop curricula which is relevant to the continent. So I think most of the content we face comes from the global north and sometimes doesn't fit well with our context. So we need as investors in developing countries in Africa to decolonize the curriculum for cybersecurity. Another point I wanted to say is we should get the youth excited to join the pipeline of cybersecurity, so to say. So we should catch them young, begin early. So, for example, at C3SA, when we've been working on a project to develop cybersecurity capacity for teachers in schools, so that the teachers are aware of cybersecurity and can pass these skills to the young ones and get them excited, so that they can even develop into that career. When we do competitions for learners, so that they're excited to do this. So I think working together, the industry and the university and society, we can come up with ways of exciting the young ones and developing curricula which is relevant and important for developing countries. Yeah,
That is such a great point, especially the part about tailoring content and curriculum specifically to meet the needs of young folks. So that way we can develop their interest early before they're in secondary institutions or even in post-secondary institutions, which I know is a particular challenge that we faced here in the US, making sure that we're getting students interested early. Charmaine, I'd love to turn to you next. So I know that Cisco's learning programs have reached over 1.8 million people in Africa, especially reaching key communities on a continent that is young and leveraging digital tools at a higher rate than their peers in the US and Europe. What strategies have you seen deliver measurable impact in tailoring educational opportunities to reflect the priorities of specific sectors or countries and also add value for underserved communities?
Thank you so much, Safa. So I'm going to pick up exactly on the point that the previous speaker made. I love the point, Wallace, that you made just around the ecosystem of collaboration. And that is so essential. In fact, that is our recipe and our award-winning ingredient when we actually collaborate. So we're very fortunate, and because of how the company has delivered globally through its Global Program Networking Academy, we're very fortunate, Safa, in that we always offered a seat at the table. And in my policy role, I do have the opportunity and the honor of serving on a number of commissions across Africa and even globally. So I'm often the first port of call when it comes to any input for the ICT ministry's policy or the regulators' regulation or any type of bill or any type of white paper or green paper. And then that's where the real journey actually starts in terms of ideation. Secondly, what's very important for us as Cisco is to always just make sure that we work with academia, we work with government, we work with various decision makers, corporates, just to try and do sufficient research around what does that particular country need. And we do find the needs are quite divergent. We find that in one country versus the other, just in terms of discipline, in terms of rhythm, in terms of requirements, it is quite vast. In South Africa, for example, to your point, Safa, we're very entrenched in the curriculum of the Departments of Higher Education and Training. So we work very closely with them to ideate and to co-create what the curriculum looks like from early age all the way through. The second thing is we're finding more and more there's a call from governments to start getting their leaders quite engaged when it comes to digital skills. So they're doing more in Cisco to open up networking academy skills in cybersecurity and AI. And we're working very closely to ensure we make these available. We're quite fortunate. We have quite a variety of partners we tap into across the globe, from Duke Corporate Education, University of Pretoria, Access Partnerships, Carnegie Mellon. And it's not something that we go at it alone. We also have a number of research papers that we tap into to find out what are communities looking for, what are fragile communities looking for, what are urban communities looking for. So I think from the offset, it's not something that we co-create alone. Relationships are important. We need the policymaker, we need the regulator, the ICT ministries at the table. We have to have input into the different curriculums, and that's what's led to our success of training 1.6 million Africans. And by the way, 500,000 of those Africans are women. So it's encouraging to see more and more that there is more of that need for us to start to create Africa's narrative when it comes to digital skills.
Such a great point, especially on how do you collaborate with different communities to ensure that you're able to tailor that content, that programming, and making sure that you're meeting the needs of folks. And I think this, if I can turn to Adam next, I think I would love to hear a sense of some of the locally led capacity building programs that y'all have put together, but really looking at the way that the UK government has made significant investments to support partner governments to harness that potential of digital access to boost economic development. And my question for you would really be like, in practice, what approaches have you seen support the development of sustainable, but also locally led capacity building programs that not only address immediate cybersecurity challenges, but also foster long-term resilience in the region?
Thank you for the question, Safa. And first of all, it's great to be here. So thank you for the honor of being able to take part in this panel alongside such distinguished fellow panelists. And Safa, it's a huge question you're posing. So let me try and tackle it. But effectively, what is the approach we need to take so that our cybersecurity capacity building interventions are effective not only in the short term, but also engender that kind of longer term resilience that you're talking about. It's in many ways the $1 million question. From my perspective, speaking from the perspective of a foreign government that's kind of active and collaborative in this part of the world, I think the holy grail really of capacity building interventions and cybersecurity interventions is finding the overlap in the Venn diagram between the two partners. So between, on the one hand, a donor country's strategic objectives, what they need to achieve for their own strategies, and on the other hand, the beneficiaries' needs. So if you can marry those two things and find the overlap in that Venn diagram, that's when you achieve real impact. So just to expand on that for a second, from my perspective, from the UK government, we have a national cyber strategy. Diplomats such as myself who are working on cyber have to act in accordance with that, and we have to follow our domestic agenda and undertake activities that are ultimately going to make UK citizens safer. But what I would say is we live in a globalized world, and this is the case in cyber as much as in any other field, really, where incidents in other countries affect people in my case, the UK, but in the kind of home country of actors in this part of the world. Cyber knows no borders, so it is necessary to deliver internationally, even if you're thinking about your own objectives. And then just on that latter point about the beneficiaries' needs, it's really important that interventions, are defined by local stakeholders and follow that local need. Capacity building interventions can't just be kind of imposed or foisted upon sovereign countries. They need to be co-created and delivered in that vein. And then there was another element to your question, which was about sustainability. So I just want to touch upon that as well. I think it's really important that we work smarter and that capacity building initiatives build on those that have come before. I think there has to be a kind of gradual stepping upwards of capacity. We can't kind of repeat the same, whether it be a training workshop or something like that, repeat it again and again with different stakeholders. It's really necessary for us to all collaborate, touching on this collaboration point across sectors, again, that both Wallace and Charmaine have raised. We understand what's happened in the past and how we can build on that to really ensure maturity and sustainability. Thank you.
Thanks for that, especially the point on how we tie these different capacity building efforts to specific needs, specific countries and communities, and just seeing that trend across the board. Ifeoma, I feel like this ties really well to my question for you on specifically on the CyberSec Policy Girls Initiative, how you all have leveraged both education and mentorship to prepare young women for careers in cybersecurity. And what I'd love to get a sense of is what specific lessons has your organization learned from past engagements that could be replicated in other generational mentorship programs across Sub-Saharan Africa? So kind of thinking about how that programming gets tailored in other places.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, for that question. And thank you. It's an honor to be here with other distinguished speakers. Also, as way of context, the CyberSec Policy Girls initiative, it's an initiative of the Cybercare and Girls Aid Foundation. It is a not-for-profit and non-political organization legally incorporated in Nigeria. So this initiative is dedicated to bridging the gender gap in the cybersphere by fostering digital literacy, cybersecurity, privacy, and data protection awareness, mentorship trainings, programs, and also promoting a safer digital world for women and children. So I'm going to have a bias for women and children. So with over 100 registered members across Africa, the initiative inspires and empowers the next generation of cybersecurity and policy professionals, privacy and data protection advocates. So to your question, the CyberSec Policy Girls Initiative leverages education and mentorship through workshops and trainings. We provide free trainings on cybersecurity fundamentals, cyber policy, cyber law, privacy, data protection, just to equip young women with technical and advocacy skills. We also offer mentorship programs. We merge experienced mentors like cybersecurity professionals, privacy experts, forensic experts, policy leaders. We pair them with mentees to guide their career growth. So providing ongoing support through regular communication and feedback to help mentees overcome challenges and actually celebrate achievements as well. So progress is tracked by an accountability team to ensure mentees achieve their goals. We also use websites and blogs. We have an active website, which is an accessible platform for sharing critical information on cyber resilience and digital safety. Every other Monday, we have a new blog post providing cybersecurity tips and checklists and encouraging girls to explore the cyber fields. And we have monthly meetings and themed webinars where we invite experts as guests to speak on cybersecurity issues or provide practical tips for digital transformation in Nigeria. So lessons learned from past engagements that could be replicated across Sub-Saharan Africa include grassroots engagement. I found that very important. So visiting rural areas like villages to teach uneducated and marginalized communities about practical cybersecurity guides like protecting bank details, using strong password again, amongst other things. I'll give you an example. Like in Nigeria, you have older women that have a bank app, and sometimes they get this random calls for people saying they're bankers. So we tell them you can't share your password with anyone, so they learn this and they're happy. And then you don't have to get your grandson to do this. This is something you could do. So we, help them with passwords, and we help them with don't share, just information that they would ordinarily not have. So grassroots engagement, then youth engagement strategy, involving young people in youth focused awareness campaigns and constructive community outreach yields participatory learning outcomes. Because I've noticed, for instance, when we're going to the universities to speak to young people about, for instance, non-consensual sharing of intimate images, they pay more attention when they're being talked to by people closer to their age, and you have members and mentees that are younger, using Gen Z slangs, and they kind of get them engaged, and then before they now go neck deep into the conversation. So also youth-based awareness, creating school-based awareness on cyberbullying, cyber stalking, and online safety. Also allocating resources because access matters, right? So we have the digital divide in Africa. I'm from Africa, right? I'm from Nigeria, rather. Nigeria is in Africa. So due to funding cuts and organizations scaling back on gender commitments, sometime this year, I decided to personally fund a laptop scholarship. And what I noticed that during the laptop scholarship selection process, I noticed that we have a lot of young girls that are talented, but they are lacking tools, unfortunately. So this shows that we have talented girls, but providing essential tools, expanding access, and empowering women, girls, and youth would promote an inclusive and effective digital space in Africa. So also implementing changes that have long-term effects, and also strategies to eradicate deep-rooted challenges. Also, one thing I find that it's also important is encouraging these mentees to also give back. They are mentees now, they can become mentors tomorrow, and then this is the way we can sustain the cycle of growth within the cybersecurity community. Thank you.
It's amazing to hear, especially the way that your team has been able to, I think, try to translate or try to connect with the next generation by focusing really on very practical ways that they are using technology and very applicable ways they're using technology in their day-to-day and how to better secure themselves while taking advantage of those new tools. So in a way, by creating more informed users of technology, you're creating this pipeline of talent that is, more primed to engage on this in the long run. I think shifting gears a little bit, looking at regional diversity and tailored approaches across the region. I think moving on this thread, Charmaine, I'd love to turn to you on this one, just like noting that Africa is so diverse with 54 countries and that have different security postures. They're navigating different circumstances, different opportunities. What regional variants and cybersecurity priorities have you seen, and how are education and policy engagement activities adapting to address these differences effectively?
Thanks so much. And firstly, Safa, you are spot on. I again, for Cisco, look after all 54 countries, even though we have sort of prioritized model. So I do spend a great deal of my time on the continent. First and foremost, trust. There's such a huge trust deficit between government and the private sector. And oftentimes, interestingly enough, when there are cyber attacks that do happen, we never get to hear about it. So it's very interesting. We have the notion that there are many companies who are attacked. And the interesting thing is there are many of those who know when they're attacked, and some don't even know. They go for months without even understanding. So first and foremost, our sort of, education always begins with government and just ensuring a few tick lists. I loved what Dr. Ifeoma was saying. I wanted to just start a round of applause because it just ticked so many of the boxes in terms of what I see on a daily basis across the continent. First and foremost, we always go into a country looking for a sponsor or looking for an ambassador, just in terms of somebody who understands that there has to be some type of a standard in place for government. So we're not saying go for strict regulation, go for hard enforcement, but have some sort of a standard that everyone can adhere to. We drafted a document in partnership with Access Partners and the University of Pretoria last year called AI and Cyber Resilience for Africa. And the document called out a few key points. First and foremost was that less than 28% of the continent has actually ratified the Malabo Convention. So again, when you find that governments are not aligning in terms of standards or some sort of guidelines, then it's very difficult for government to actually trickle that down to population and worse into rural areas and try and put some sort of a standard there. The second thing we find is that in terms of digital skills alignment, it's just so diverse. You find that everybody who is connected and protected is normally in urban areas and in the center. And when you further out, you go to rural areas and NGOs, then you find that that's where the 60% of unconnected Africa hits very, very hard when it comes to the more fragile communities. And we find that if we have a sponsor in government who is prepared to work with us and collaborate. So in one of the countries I work very closely in, about roughly 6 months ago, I received a call asking me, can I help that government and work with them to block AI? Can I put in stringent processes and regulation to make sure that AI does not accelerate and advance? And of course, my first question was, why do you want to block AI? Because you're locking out entrepreneurs, you're locking out innovators. Let's figure out the situation that makes you think that AI is not for the country. So again, having that thought leadership with governments who trust and reach out. And then on the other hand, I get a call from a completely different government who says, I would like to draft guidelines ensuring that each and every government official in my department undergoes cybersecurity and AI training, even if it's training that we need to work together to co-create for the different levels. We don't need something that's off the shelf. We can actually work at pulling something together, all the way through to some governments that say to us, let's go out into our technical, vocational and educational training colleges where there are thousands spread across a country, more into the deep rural areas. And let's work together with the educators and with the learners to see how we can bring in more structure around education on how do we keep safe, how do we stay safe. And again, it differs as you go through the different areas. And something else which was very concerning for us that the report called out, the report said that if you look at a country like South Africa, with the population of close to 62 million, or maybe it's even more now, there were only 59,000 cybersecurity professionals in our country. And when we delve, I can tell you that the majority of those cybersecurity professionals are not in rural areas. They're not in government. They in private sector and mostly banking. In Nigeria, they had a count of roughly 8,700 cybersecurity professionals. It's alarming. That is so concerning. That if you look at, and it's no wonder that there is such a proliferation of attacks across the continent, because first and foremost, we are understaffed. And globally, if you look at the figure, it's roughly 4 to 5 million cybersecurity roles that are open. So again, what we keep going back to governments to highlight is just, first and foremost, how do we help you as Cisco? You've given us a seat at the table. Therefore, let's get a sponsor. Let's get somebody who understands that everything that is connected has to be protected. Secondly, let's work with the number of agencies, like in South Africa, I'm on the board of We Think Code. I'm one of the sponsors of Girl Code, and a whole host of other entities and NGOs that make it their life's worth to go out and inform our women and the youth in rural communities, and helping them enable how to keep safe and putting them through boot camps. We also work very closely with governments, especially in the education sector and in the ministries of youth and persons with disabilities, to take this education and training out and to make it a bit more stringent. And I think most importantly, just ensuring that where we are able, there's in Kenya, we work with Refugee, which is an organization that houses young girls who actually flee from Somalia, from various countries, Ethiopia, etc., and they end up in Kenya. And it was so rewarding for us to see 2 years ago start to graduate so many of these young refugees, as many of them as young as 14, 15, who had children, simply because I think to point, when they get online to inform family members that they are now safe in a country, and then you have people who then tend to take advantage of situation and do then mislead them online, and that's where we play a vital role, just in terms of bringing in the cybersecurity training as part of the Free Networking Academy training to these NGOs, to governments. But I think most importantly, there has to be, coming back to our initial discussion, that relationship of collaboration and trust that exists between us, governments, and between NGOs, academia, and a whole host of players.
I really like that point on trust, and how that is really the bedrock of all future engagements with a partner government, which I think ties nicely to my question for Wallace. When conducting research on the capacity and the maturity of specific countries, what approaches does C3SA take to tailor both those assessments and recommendations that account for the unique features of that specific country or region?
Yeah, so that's very important, because it's kind of often tempting to imagine that Africa is homogeneous, that it's the same everywhere, but things are different. Countries differ in terms of their cybersecurity, in terms of their culture, economics, and so on. So it's kind of, for us, it's important that we understand the country, and that the research and our context is in line with the country's context. Just imagine that it's kind of, the topic is a bit sensitive. So, often countries sometimes are apprehensive. If you say you want to come to your country, often it's a process of negotiation with countries, sometimes being scared of maybe us exposing them. So we have to negotiate and understand the context. So before going to the country, we try to understand as much as we can about the country. And I think most of our work is through co-design and collaboration with the country. And at the end of the day, even before we publish our reports, we have to engage with the country again to say, we came here, we did this. It is okay. Do you understand? At the moment, we are working on a project which is sponsored by ICANN, and is focusing on DNS abuse. So part of this training, part of this is that we have to go and train the countries as part of our research process. So even before we go to a country, we are engaging with authorities to understand their needs and their context, so that when we go in to do the training and to do the research, we understand we're coming from a point of appreciating them and and working with them together. And I think almost another point we have done, almost like a deliberate effort on our side, is that in composing our team of the people in the C3SA, we have put people from different parts of Africa. So it helps us to understand some of the details of life in the east and the west and the north of Africa. So this helps us to get much more immersed. Even the recommendations we make afterwards have to take into account the realities of the country, where they are, to say, you're at this level, therefore maybe can recommend as next you go to this level. So otherwise, there'll be resistance to you doing research, resistance to implementing your recommendation if you're not working with the countries and you're not showing appreciation of the context of the country. Yeah.
It's a great point, especially on the recruiting piece, to make sure that your team reflects the communities that you are serving. If Yoma, if I can turn to you next, I'd love to get a sense on, as our sole civil society representative here, I think I'd love to get a sense of how do organizations like yours integrate policy, legal frameworks, and governance structures to help the next generation adapt to rapid technological change?
Yeah, we integrate policy, law, and governance by training participants on cybersecurity policies and legal frameworks, both in Nigeria, Africa, and globally. I have written and published extensively on the legal and regulatory landscape of cyber laws and AI governance in Africa. So I ensure that our mentees have access to these publications and other literature to broaden their horizon on the cyber policies and governance. Also providing awareness on data and privacy rights to strengthen accountability in public and private sectors, and also being a cyber law expert and policy advisor, I ensure that initiatives are grounded in governance principles. We have collaborated with global and regional institutions like ISACA and the UNODC, so embedding international best practices in African context. So basically, the integration ensures that the next generation not only has technical expertise, but also understands policy compliance, ethics, regulatory adaptation in a fast-changing digital environment.
It's amazing just to hear how you all are taking this interdisciplinary approach to ensure that you're developing a very robust, but also very ready workforce, or ready pipeline that's ready to join the workforce. And Adam, if I could turn to you next, I think I'd love to get a sense of how initiatives about raising awareness on cybersecurity risks among the public, how are you all seeing that, and what role do you see public engagement playing in strengthening regional resilience, leveraging that as a tool?
Thank you so much, Safa. I love the question. Public awareness is super critical on cyber. Cybersecurity is often presented as a technical issue, but as much as it's a technical issue, I think it's a human issue. It's humans rather than networks that are often the kind of weak link in the chain and the weak point when it comes to threats, cyber threats. Hostile actors will, conduct social engineering attacks. They will seek out people who can be the vulnerable link for their, whether it be ransomware or phishing attacks. They just need someone to click on the link. So I really think this is such a good demonstration of how important it is that we raise awareness at that public level. In terms of how best to do this, it's a difficult one, but my view is that we need a holistic approach. There's a kind of division of labor that can happen. It should not just be governments throwing things at people. We need to use all types of voices, all types of communities to reach people. And by doing so, we can create networks of informal ambassadors and knowledge networks, and really raise the kind of baseline levels of population-wide cyber awareness, cyber education, and cyber hygiene. And I think we require both the top-down approach, which comes from governments, for example. That would be policies, legislations, school curriculums we've already touched upon, but also bottom-up, community organizations, civil society, NGOs, even businesses, particularly SMEs, schools and educational institutions. So I think and the media, of course. So I think everyone has a role to play. And I'd like to give an example of a project that we've been involved in as the UK government here in South Africa, working with the DCDT, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. A few years ago, we supported development of a national cybersecurity awareness campaign that consisted of materials for school learners and also teachers and parents. And they were kind of cross-media materials, so would include things like games and videos, in addition to your traditional teaching materials. And they were also translated into 6 of the 11 official languages of South Africa. So really trying to achieve that wide reach that I was talking about. This was a few years ago now, but I'm delighted to say that we're looking at refreshing that. So it's a kind of continued focus of the government here in South Africa, and I know more widely across the continent as well. In addition to the schools toolkit, there was also an SMMEs toolkit, so targeted at small businesses. And I believe that's now been replicated in Kenya and Nigeria, which is a really great news, but critically evidence for how needed and how valuable these kind of initiatives are. So holistic approach is what I would say, top down as well as bottom up. And just a point I would end on is that although this is a really important foundation level, cybersecurity is broader than awareness alone. So we need that foundation, and then we need to build upon it. But it's such a multifaceted field that we can't achieve our goals just by building awareness alone. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Adam. And I really love the focus on trying to offer something that's like more creative and novel, like a game, like a video. I think that can help reach more communities in a different way than the typical, I don't know, I think PSAs, lectures, presentations. It can do so much more. It can help drive home those conversations that folks need to be having. For folks joining us online, just one quick plug. You can submit your questions for panelists at askac.org. I believe that we also have a chyron at the bottom of the screen that you can see that link. So you can feel free to submit questions there, and I can start to feed those over to the panelists shortly. While we're waiting for those questions to join in, I have a question just for, as a round robin for any speakers, just looking ahead, what emerging opportunities or priority areas do you think should be the continent's focus to ensure that capacity building initiatives remain effective and sustainable the next 5 to 10 years? And whoever wants to take that question, please feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah, I think I can provide input into that. So, I mean, so for an example of what we're doing at the University of Cape Town at the moment, is that we are beginning sort of a new doctoral program. We're having a PhD hub, as we call it. So the idea is to implement what we call an industry PhD. So be working together with the government, the industry, both national and international, to kind of develop capacity. I mean, one issue we are facing in terms of training of researchers and students is the lack of spaces for them to practice the cybersecurity thing. So in this new program, the students on the program will actually be attached to organizations, to government, industry. I mean, we've got partners, both local and international. So we think that by working together with the government and industry in this kind of program where our students go to the industry, and the industry experts also get involved in teaching and mentoring the students that we throw. This will give us a pipeline of researchers and cybersecurity experts. So we think that so this is sustainable and can be replicated across Africa. Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Wallace. Anyone else?
I'll jump in, Safa. Thank you again for the question. I think really important to think about the next 5 to 10 years as you framed it in the question. I'm going to throw in perhaps a more challenging point, which is that coming from a kind of government perspective, as a diplomat representing a foreign government working on cyber issues, there's a kind of sober reality that's creeping in, whereby the world is becoming a more dangerous place. And in the perspective of a lot of governments, myself included, back home in the UK, you're seeing a move where cyber as an issue is moving away from being a kind of capacity building concern more towards being a security issue. You know, I could actually say it's moving back towards being a security issue, as you could argue that's where cyber policy in the government context came about. If we think way back to kind of early encryption in the World War II context, or the early days of the internet as a DARPA, Department of Defense funded initiative in the US in the 60s and 70s. So I think as the world becomes a more threatening, a more dangerous place, this is being reflected in the realm of cyber. You know, we're seeing ever increasing cyber attacks from hostile actors across all countries. This is not just an issue that affects the UK and the US, although the US in particular, European countries, the UK are the most active in terms of communicating their deterrence activities and attributing attacks, but you know, it's happening all around the world. So I think we need to consider the direction that cyber capacity building might go in when it comes to government interactions on this issue. You know, ultimately the goal is a free, open, peaceful, and secure cyberspace, and that can be achieved in many different realms. So we can't afford to lose sight of that, and to lose sight of the reason why we do cyber capacity building, which in my view is to protect our people, our citizens, our businesses, our economies, our borders, etc. So I just wanted to contribute that thought into the conversation. Thank you.
I really appreciate that point on trying to tie larger security and strategy goals to the smaller capacity building initiatives.
Maybe I can add. I want to appreciate Dr. Ifeoma and Charmaine, especially on the part of the marginalized groups, because yes, there is a lot of focus in governments and in organizations, but the connected people in the villages and older people and young women, they also get the most attacks. And there has not been, you know, sufficient organized efforts, you know, at governments level to support cybersecurity capacity and just raising awareness. So way forward should be organizations to start focusing on those kind of initiatives. We need more Ifeomas who will do this kind of initiatives and say this is goal targeted, this is, you know, USSD attack targeted, because we all think everybody uses an app, but there are still people who are using USSD codes, who don't know how to protect themselves, who don't know that their money can be stolen by manipulating USSD codes. So I just wanted to add that as well, that at societal level, there is capacity building that is needed. Thank you.
Agree completely. Sorry, Ifeoma, please, over to you.
For the kind words. Yeah, just to you know, jump into your last question. Some of these opportunities might not be emerging, but my contribution would be digital inclusion and access, expanding programs like the laptop scholarship, or to ensure access to devices and internet connectivity, kind of to bridge the digital gap in Africa, and also AI and data protection, preparing young professionals to deal with privacy and ethical challenges of AI and big data, and also grassroots cyber literacy, like scaling rural outreach to ensure uneducated and underserved communities are included in the digital safety education. Also regional and international collaboration, building partnership with global cybersecurity institutions to align Africa's workforce with international standards, and also women and youth empowerment. Like I said, I have a bias for women and girls. So women, empowerment, prioritizing gender equity in STEM so that women are not left behind in the fourth industrial revolution. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ifeoma. Charmaine, over to you.
Yeah, so maybe a final point for me. It was very interesting. I'm at the Government Technology Conference, which runs over 3 days. And actually, I worked at State Information Technology Agency before, and I served on the President's 4IR Commission as well. President Ramaphosa and I was chair of the Policy and Legislative Commission. Always very interesting for me is that when you look across governments, each and every one of them have a Ministry of Women or Ministry of Youth and a Ministry of People with Disabilities. Very interesting. The Minister of DCT said something very interesting this morning in our one-on-one engagements, and he was like, Charmaine, how can you bring in the power of Cisco to support us in government, just in terms of activating the department where I have a department that looks after women and persons with disabilities. And again, I just think it comes back again always for me when I look at the phenomenal work we do across the continent, the issue of trust always comes in. Because there are so many, I think back of last year, December, we worked closely with the government of Cote d'Ivoire. We brought in the Ministry of Women, Civil Society and Youth in Cote d'Ivoire, and it was also in Liberia, as well as Senegal and a whole host of neighboring countries. And again, there is that passion and there's that dedication and there's commitment from all of us as women leaders and our allies, but all they just need sometimes, they need an Ifeoma, they need a Charmaine, they need a Tendani, they need a Wallace, and they need an Adam, and one of us in these organizations who are prepared to lean in just a bit harder in terms of ensuring that we activate all of our resources. But most importantly, the reason why I have the energy to do what I do, powered by Cisco, because governments trust me. So I think the more that trust relationship opens up from our government leaders, and we have heads of states inviting me to the table, DGs and ministers, DDGs inviting me to a seat at the table, it puts the onus on me as an African citizen to say, as an African who lives on the continent, whose whole life is going to be spent on this continent, I therefore need to activate the power of any organization that I serve into to ensure that the policies and the processes, and to ensure that the digital skills and all of that investment in terms of mentorship, sponsorship, coaching is given into governments and into NGOs and into civil society organizations, etc. So I think it becomes quite vital for us, regardless of where we are, if the trust is there, for us just to continue to use our resources in Cisco and everywhere else to pay it forward.
That is such an amazing point, Charmaine, that you raise on specifically on how different individuals and organizations can serve as champions to activate resources, attention, collateral, just to ensure that we're doing the work that we all need to do and contributing the small things that we can all contribute to really drive change and promote inclusion moving forward. So just thank you for, I think, helping us wrap this panel on a really positive note. I know we're slightly over time here, but this is all the time that we have for this particular discussion. I just really want to thank Wallace, Tendani, and our partners at the University of Cape Town for their continued partnership and their commitment to the next generation on cyber workforce development, and especially for lending their expertise today. A sincere thanks is also due to Adam, Ifeoma, Charmaine for joining us, sharing your perspective, and showing us the different educational efforts underway at your different organizations that support more cyber resilient societies and also help advance the maturation of cyber policy. We'll now take a very short break and we'll reconvene, I believe, in 30 minutes for our next discussion, which will be focused on From Simulation to Reality, how Cyber 912 creates career pathways. So tune in, stay tuned. We'll be back in 30 minutes for that discussion. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Welcome back, everyone, to Building Cybersecurity Capacity in Sub-Saharan Africa. My name is Morgan McMurray, and I'm the Associate Director of Capacity Building with the Cyber Statecraft Initiative here at the Atlantic Council. In just a moment, I'll be introducing our panelists for our second discussion of the day, From Simulation to Reality, How Cyber 912 Creates Career Pathways. But before we bring them on, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the Cyber 912 Strategy Challenge itself and why it has become such a meaningful experience for so many of the students who compete. For those who may not know, Cyber 912 is a cyber policy and strategy challenge designed to help college and university students from across academic disciplines deepen their understanding of how governments, industry, and civil society manage and respond to a major cyber crisis. Since its launch in Washington, D.C. in 2012, the competition has grown into a truly global program with regional events across the United States and in cities including London, Dundee, Geneva, Paris, San Jose, and of course, Cape Town, South Africa. Together, these events have trained more than 7,000 students worldwide. Between 2021 and 2024, our team at CSI partnered with University of Cape Town's C3SA to host Cyber 912 competitions for Sub-Saharan Africa, welcoming teams representing universities in South Africa, Eswatini, Namibia, Botswana, Malawi, Senegal, Nigeria, and Ghana. These students stepped into the shoes of national cyber advisors tasked with responding to a fast-moving and realistic crisis scenario, assessing its implications for governments, businesses, and citizens, and recommending courses of action to senior decision makers who were represented by expert judges. Each Cyber 912 scenario differs, but they are always grounded in real-world dynamics. In 2022, for example, teams in South Africa faced a ransomware attack on a fictional African credit union, one that spiraled into leaked election data, heightened political tensions, and raised international questions about safe harbors for cyber criminals. In 2023, the scenario revolved around an environmental hacktivist group disrupting South Africa's energy infrastructure during a cold front, leading to power outages, social unrest, and even loss of life. And then in 2024, students confronted vulnerabilities in global shipping software that cascaded into multiple effects, including counterfeit medication smuggling, congested ports, and a ransomware campaign that impacted the region's logistics systems. Through these scenarios, students tested their knowledge and experienced the complexity and trade-offs of crisis management, from technical vulnerabilities to political decision-making. They also had the opportunity to engage with judges drawn from across Africa's cyber authorities, their private sector, academic institutions, and civil society organizations. These conversations often extended well beyond the competition, leading to lasting mentorships. Which brings us to today's panel. I'm thrilled to welcome back 4 Cyber 912 alumni who competed in Cape Town and have since gone on to impactful careers across cybersecurity, technology, and digital transformation. Each of them brings a unique perspective on how the competition shaped their professional journeys and how they're now contributing to broader cybersecurity capacity of their communities and countries. As a reminder, you can submit questions for our panelists at askac.org, askac.org. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. We are joined by Erwin Matotsi, an IT and AI analyst, MozFest at the Mozilla Foundation, Emmanuel Mkandawire, Network and Application Security Officer at the Malawi Revenue Authority, Papama Mtembeka, Assistant Lecturer at University of Cape Town, and Twambilile Mwawanda, Team Leader, Technical Operations for Emerged Livelihoods. Welcome all.
Thank you.
To kick us off, yes, good to be with you. To kick us off, I would just love to hear from each of you what year you competed in Cyber 912 and what initially motivated you to participate in the 912 Strategy Challenge. Maybe we can start with Erwin.
Thank you so much, Morgan. On my side, I participated in 2023. That was the year which I participated on, and it was about a bug and phishing within emails that causes critical infrastructure to collapse.
And what motivated you to join the competition?
So before I joined the competition, what actually motivated me was I had friends who participated the previous year, and they got to tell me about one of the biggest motivator initially, so sorry for the background noise, was the networking part. Some told me that we get to stay in nice hotels, some told me that we get to eat nice food, and some got to tell me the interesting things that they have to do, real world simulation, which actually simulated what I wanted in a technical career, and it was something that really gave me the motivation to join.
Thank you. Papama, why don't you go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Papama, and I participated in 2022. And then after that, I was part of the coordinating team at ECT with CPSA. So I got to experience it 2 more times. And what motivated me was, so I was in my honors year at that time, and I'd had my first exposure to cybersecurity just generally because I was doing research in cybersecurity compliance amongst university students. So I took the opportunity to sort of just learn more and immerse myself a little bit more in, what the field is about. And yeah, I also just wanted to test myself outside of the classroom because I was just learning about these concepts. So I figured, real life simulation would be great. So I could actually see how it works in real life situations. Yeah.
Definitely. And it's been a joy to work with you as part of the organizing team as well. Quick follow-up then, can you clarify whether you were planning to go into cybersecurity beforehand?
So before the competition, I wasn't. Afterwards, I think I didn't plan on going into industry, but my plan was to continue with research, especially the work that is done by the C3SA when it comes to capacity building. So yeah.
No, that's amazing. Thank you. Twambilile, would you like to go next?
Yes, and to answer your question, I completed in 2022. I was in the team for Cyber Warriors, and why I joined the competition mostly was to gain exposure outside my coursework. I studied computer systems and security, so it was already in the path for cybersecurity and stuff, but I wanted some kind of real life exposure on what actually happens in the real world, apart from the coursework that we were doing. So yeah, I think primarily that was it, to get more exposure, to see what's actually in the world, apart from the technical aspect. So that's why I joined. Thank you.
Yeah, makes sense. Emmanuel, last but not least.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel, as introduced. I competed Cyber 912 twice. The first time was during the COVID pandemic. We had it was a virtual competition. Why I participated during the first time was because since we were in lockdown and we were doing school, I thought that could keep me busy. And it did, because the scenario was really good, and it also was a wake-up call for me to dive deep into the topic of cybersecurity. I competed now the second time. I was in my third year, actually my fourth year. So the second time now was because I had chosen to take the path of cybersecurity, and then competing the second time was going now to shape me and prepare me now for the industry. And when we participated in Cape Town, it indeed was a fruitful competition. I made networks. I also learned new skills. Particularly, one of the skills that I gained was a holistic view to cybersecurity, not just the technical aspect of it, especially the policies that we made, escalating the situation, and it was quite a good experience, I should say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, that's amazing. And I think part of the reason why Cyber 912 has, had sustainability, right, is because it provides that holistic approach to a scenario-based exercise. And you've already answered part of my next question for the panel here, which is, how did the competition influence or reshape the vision that you had for your career after school? So Papama has already given us an answer. Emmanuel, anything to add other than what you've already said?
Yeah, that's quite it. It really reinforced the zeal to join the cybersecurity task force. Yes, thank you.
And then I'll kick it over to Papama if you have anything else to add.
Perhaps I can add. So even though I'm currently not doing any work specifically in cybersecurity, I am doing research in inclusive finance and women empowerment. And I think that's actually one of the things that pushed me towards the competition, and the exposure to the competition was one of the things that pushed me towards sort of this, empowering people and inclusivity and digital transformation. And there are aspects of the competition that I've sort of brought with me into my research, because it's still very much about technology, and obviously because it is digital finance, there are aspects of security that are a concern with the people that I engage with within my research.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. It makes complete sense. And I think evidence to the fact that cybersecurity and tech policy more broadly touches all parts of day-to-day life. And we can definitely dig into some of those additional uses later. Twambi, would you like to go next?
Yes. So maybe I can expand more on the exposure part. So when I was going through my undergrad, I was a bit confused on how to actually proceed with my career, because we're exposed to a lot of things. And there was actually a lot of items going around, and mostly like the technical aspects. So going through the training, actually, the competition actually helped me to see another world of the policy world, what it actually entails, what actually happens. I think mostly when we're going through our university, the part that's actually emphasized the most is on the technical aspect. People tend to ignore the policies and what they actually bring to the table. And going through the competition itself, and being on the other end, maybe as someone who is actually giving the feedback, the direction, and seeing the impact it may have in terms of international relations, it was a huge eye opener. And it helped me as well to have an interest in policy making, in policy, giving my input in terms of making decisions. So I learned a new aspect of the technical world. It also helped me to have an interest in policy making. I never had that interest. Now I'm an enthusiast for policy making because I know the impact it makes, because it starts from the beginning before we even want to get the results. So I want to be in the forefront of people making the initiatives and the laws and the regulations. Yeah, I would say that much.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, and a great story. And so happy to hear that it helped sort of clarify, right, the path that you were most interested in. Erwin, maybe I'll turn it over to you. How did the competition influence or reshape the vision you had for your career after graduation?
I can say that initially on my side, I was I was more on programming. Let me just say, yeah, I was more into development, developing and solving problems. And cybersecurity initially was not something that I never thought that I'd ever work there. Thinking that someone would just call me 2 a.m. that we have an issue, security breach. I didn't want that stress. But after I attended 7 and 12, I found out that cybersecurity actually is the foundation and the reliability of anything or any solution that we can offer out there. Especially joining 7 and 12, it showed me that there are many interconnections within an object or a system that we can look at in terms of security, in terms of how it shares knowledge, how it distributes, how it sounds like. For example, I'm also into AI. Security can also mean what happens after the users use those things. how does it affect the communities? How does it affect the whole global consumer? How does it affect those without voices? How does it affect, people like members of the LGBTQ? How does it prone people to things like bullying, cyberbullying, and all those things? So Cyber 912 really shaped my mind into thinking that, we are developing these things. Security is the foundation of each and every solution and object that we can give to humankind. As security is also a need to each and every person, and it is a need for everything to be secured, and that is what assures its reliability. That is the biggest impact that I have of 7 and 12 as someone who was into development.
No, and I love that perspective because you're so right. Like, security is a need for all populations, whether they're familiar with the technical aspect of it or not. And so I love, the good for humanity perspective here. And this actually is a good transition. I have some questions for you all about your current roles before we pivot back to, scenario-based exercises. So Erwin, back to you. You're currently at the Mozilla Foundation. Can you speak a little bit to your current role and how you've brought in some of those technical components to, an entity that emphasizes ethics, inclusion, and digital rights?
As it might not maybe look like, checking my career background, the impact that Cyber 912 had. But it was in Cyber 912 that I heard that just a security breach can cause a political unrest, and just a small breach of information can result in murder, can result in things like depression. And joining with Mozilla and what we or they stand for, things like inclusion, ethics, fighting for those who do not have voices, having technology accessible, having technology secured. I'm someone who tends to have imposter syndrome, but the foundation that I got at Cyber 912, knowing very well that cybersecurity is there to protect whether our rights or our information, but security and cybersecurity as a whole is there to protect us. It's what gave me the confidence and to continually grow within the security role and data protection role. It is what gave me that confidence and that gave me that head start, so that even when I'm within that community, I'm able to understand what they do. I'm able to see its importance on how far this can go and how important this is to actually be included in.
No, and that's beautiful. Thank you for that, and great to hear about the impact that it had, both on you personally and also the work that you're currently doing. Papama, over to you. So you've mentioned already briefly what your research explores, financial inclusion, feminist technology studies. From that lens, are there gaps between, the theoretical solutions that you're exploring and the practical applications being tested in communities, and how best to address that?
Okay, so there are actually gaps. I think maybe since doing the competition, obviously, I think my perspective on just approaching my research has really been changed. I think the perception that I have now is sort of looking at things more as an ecosystem, and I think I've got more interest in experiences, right? That are how people experience technology, and not just in the security aspect. And I think that often in academia, there's like a big focus on developing, theoretical models for digital inclusion, but that look really, really good on paper, right? When we're discussing them and we're presenting them, but they don't really always translate into the everyday realities of people. And that's with cybersecurity capacity research that we do, and also just for digital inclusion and financial inclusion studies that I do. So for example, in my case, we are interested in mobile technology adoption, so like mobile banking and things like that. And normally that comes with sort of this assumption of access, right? We start off assuming that people have access. Now we want to talk about how do they use, these technologies, how do they adopt them? And I think that in my work as well, that it's more than just, access that we need to look at. We need to sort of bridge that gap by finding, or at least developing solutions that are grounded in, indigenous practices and context of people. And that's something that I think I learned quite a bit in the competition that we did. And I think that was because of how interdisciplinary it ended up being than what I'd expected. Yeah, so the fact that I, with my politics major, had a space in the cybersecurity realm, it was like, oh, okay, there's so much more that, can be done. And I think that is quite important when it comes specifically to, academia and research, and making sure that we are actually having real impact in people's lives if we're thinking inclusion and, raising capacity, awareness, all of those things.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I agree. I think there are certainly interesting ways that we can explore how things are making an impact. And I want to dig in a little bit later. I won't pressure you now, but a little bit later on how scenario-based events can do that even better. But agree that the interdisciplinary approach is a good one. Building on that, Twambilile, I know that you do work supporting digital transformation as well for under-resourced populations. So curious, what strategies you've found most effective for ensuring that those communities are not only included in the work, but feel empowered to participate in shaping their own digital future. Twambi, are you with us? Okay. Okay, in a second, let's just make sure that she's still connected. Emmanuel, maybe I'll hit over to you. As you are in a pretty technical role, as dealing with cyber threats and with the rapid rise of cyber threats across Africa and globally, maybe we can pivot to chat a little bit about what kinds of threats or threat actors you think future scenario-based competitions like Cyber 912 or other tabletop exercise should spotlight to prepare the next generation of cyber professionals.
Thank you very much for that question. Well, we are indeed living in a very connected world, which is slowly turning into a global village. I believe that if such competitions focus on issues like emerging technologies like AI, to say how generative AI is being used right now, we are talking of deepfakes. If we can incorporate such technologies in this scenario-based competitions, it's going to be very good. For example, we can have a scenario maybe where we have seen it even now. We have elections in Malawi just coming up next week, and we have seen deepfakes of presidential candidates, used for propaganda and all these things. And that can also be used by cyber criminals, cyber attackers, and also to point out that policies have not really been put in place on the use of AI, because AI is growing every day and people are adopting it, and everyone is just using it according to how they want it to help them. So if we can incorporate, say, AI and also cross-border cyber terrorism, and then bring up a scenario that will trigger the students to look into such issues. How can we govern AI? How can we control adversarial AI usage and all these things? I think it would be very important to shape the next level of professions in cybersecurity, because I think gone are the days where we are dealing with generic attacks that we're using, maybe the social engineering to go to offices and all these things. Now AI can write scripts to automate certain things. So I feel like it will be very important to incorporate these things in the next competitions that are coming up. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think you've hit on a concern that many places in the world are focusing on right now, for sure. And I think it'd be so important to get the next generations both perspective on the problem, but also, you know, how can we leverage AI while also mitigating against the threats that AI presents? Yeah, it's a very unique situation we find ourselves in, for sure. But ripe for opportunity in tabletop exercises. If anyone watching runs them, please take note. Twambilile, can you hear me okay? Just making sure you're back with us.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank
Great.
you.
Perfect. And I want to pivot back to you about digital transformation to learn a little bit more about your perspective here, building off of Papama's answers. You know, curious what strategies you've found working with under-resourced populations or in rural and marginalized communities. You know, what works best for not only including those communities in capacity building, but also empowering them to participate in shaping their own digital futures.
All right. Thank you so much. So my work primarily work with underutilized communities where they lack access to, let's say, good internet, enough resources, and etc. And with the aspect of digital transformation, there's a rise in cyber attacks because what mostly happens is we introduce new technologies to people in the communities, but there was a gap in giving them the full resources for them to stay safe online. So it's like one of the challenges that people are trying to work around for them to be more equipped. And what we have done, we have increased the trainings that we were doing in digital skills training. We were doing awareness campaigns to people for everyone to be well informed on whatever catches that maybe they're adopted or different programs that are also safe online. In these initiatives, we have worked in various ways. One of the ways that has actually shown great impact is having partners in these communities. So with partnerships, we're able to utilize other people's resources in these communities. So it helps us to work in a place with the people, the leaders in that place. And also once we leave, there is that kind of sustainability where there's no gap after we leave. The other part with the partnerships is that it helps in integration. So for example, there is easier community buy-in, there's easier community leaders in supporting us in getting the outreach in different aspects. So it's more of a shift the power campaign because we want to go in an area, give our trainings, our awareness, we build our capacity, and then we leave. The other part that actually works is also called designing with the people. So from what we have, we go into an area, we have a discussion with them, we learn from them, and also build solutions with these people. So it helps it to be more contextualized because sometimes there's been times where people go in with good solutions that are very important, but they can't relate to them because they can't access that kind of technology. They cannot maybe also implement it in their livelihoods. So when you co-design with them, it actually helps you to make a proper initiative that maybe that's not going to adopt. And maybe the last one would be giving resources, because as much as there is a knowledge gap, there is all these gaps that people are trying to resolve, but then the resources that will actually help them to transform their lives is still a huge impact. So this can be mitigated through the partnerships as well as maybe the funding that we've done, but a holistic approach where now the technical meets the policy side is very important. So I would keep it at that, and yeah, back to you.
Thank you for that. And it sounds like, you know, you and Papama both mentioned this a little bit, and it calls back to a bit of what was discussed in the first panel, which is there's no one size fits all approach, right, to digital transformation. Each community has different needs, different problems that they're facing. And it's also important to build trust with community leaders to make sure that that's there in the population as well. So great to hear that. I have a few round robin questions that we can go around as folks have an answer before turning in the last section of this conversation to audience questions, which I'll just remind the audience, if you do have questions for the panelists, we will get to those in a little bit, and you can submit them at askac.org, which is askac.org. So I guess first round robin question, and if you have an answer, you can feel free to jump in. What can programs like Cyber 912 and any scenario-based exercise do more effectively to attract students and young professionals into the cyber field, and then empower them to strengthen that capacity in their own home countries?
Morgan, could you please just repeat your question again? I just want to make sure I'm understanding properly.
Absolutely. So what can programs like Cyber 912 or other scenario-based programming exercises, how can they more effectively attract students and young professionals to the cyber field while also empowering them to strengthen capacity in their home countries? So how can we get more people involved in the cyber field who may not have considered it before, and then encourage them to apply that work and the learnings they take, like you have done, into their future careers?
Yeah. Well, firstly, just specifically Cyber 912, I think something that would probably help is perhaps before sending out like the invitations for the actual cybersecurity competition itself when it comes up, I think perhaps maybe like making, I don't know, like posters and things that can be sent out, even just like at UCT. Because for us, right, when we were planning, for example, when I joined, it wasn't through any, direct marketing or anything like that. Like it was someone within the C3SA team who said, oh, this is happening, do you want to join? And then I went and found people to join in my team, right? And I think even after that, like the last 2 years when we had the competition as a team, what we did was we did send out, obviously, the invitation email through the contacts, but it came only at like the time leading up to the competition. So I think perhaps more awareness prior to that, just so there is like a bigger presence. I think that would be like a great thing to have students involved, and then perhaps efforts to, have smaller things, maybe smaller engagements around, even if it's just webinars, like smaller webinars aside from the competition itself. I think that would really help in just kind of building and keeping the momentum, and as you said, empowering organizations and universities and communities to sort of keep the awareness strategy, all of that going outside of the competition itself. And then I would say the other thing would probably be maybe reaching out to like more underdeveloped communities outside of like these major universities that we have, and perhaps that could come with maybe actually like with our partnerships with, so maybe as C3SA and whatever other organizations that are in cybersecurity resilience capacity building, sort of bringing in this strategy, policy, all these types of things into what they're already doing, and perhaps just putting the exposure out there to those communities. And I think that would be something that, would have more impact, I would think, because currently it is only accessible, or at least available to students who are in the universities. And even then, it's also quite limited to, the networks that we have, at least the channels that we have, as far as disseminating the information or sending out invitations and things like that.
Such a good point. Most organizations could probably agree that marketing remains a pain point for certain programming. But I love the idea of, branching out of set networks and also offering some maybe foundational side events or follow-up events that can help folks, ease the path into a more technical career. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have comments, maybe especially about attracting folks who haven't normally considered a cyber career before?
Yes, yes. I would like to concur with Papama and also make an addition to say competitions like Cyber 912 are very, very important, and they're very, very good because they have shaped some of our careers. However, if we need to increase much on visibility, because there's this notion to say cybersecurity is just maybe sitting behind the terminal, patching softwares, penetration testing, and what have you. But there's also the policy side. So if we are to sell that to people that are not very technical, like I am, or like some of us are, they would be interested in that. So maybe they did economics, they did maybe public relations, public administration. They would find the interest in the policy aspect of cybersecurity. So if we have more visibility, more awareness on how there's need for the holistic approach to cybersecurity, it would be very important, and it would also encourage some to join. I can also give an example. I'm now in Washington DC, and we have a Cyber 912 competition coming up, I think next month in New York. So I was talking to some of my fellow students to say, there's this competition. Do you know about it? They're like, no, I don't know. I've never even heard about it. So I was there now explaining to them. So that also shows to say we are not visible enough. And if we can increase on that, I'm sure more people will be interested in the same. I had people that are doing electrical engineering that they have never done anything related to cybersecurity. But I told them, no, it's not about penetration testing. It's policy. We're just analyzing a scenario and responding to it. Now we are trying to mobilize a team. So I feel like if we can do more on giving people this holistic view, say cybersecurity is beyond sitting behind the terminal, it's beyond patching softwares, I think would attract more people into the space. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And thank you for doing some of that work for us, getting the word out. I didn't even have to plug the upcoming competition. Thank you. And you're so right. This is first and foremost, a policy strategy competition. I have seen other programming focus on the more technical side of things, though, as well. But I think you're right. In order to, bring folks in who have not previously considered a career in cyber, making it clear that cyber, again, touches many parts of day-to-day life, and that multiple people, even if they don't come from a technical background, can absolutely have a role. Erwin or Twambi, anything to add before I turn to the next question?
On that one, I can basically say something based on my experience, that when most people talk about tech, or when most people talk about technology, now we know what's going on. There's the AI hype, but within that AI hype, we forget other things like security behind it. For example, I also went to university. We did very legal, in terms of cybersecurity or security as a whole. So one thing that I will suggest is that increasing awareness or reach out to younger people, not only those in universities, but starting at a younger age, spreading awareness on there is security within technicalities. For example, one of the things that we are dealing with at Mozilla this year, it is security by default, that many people, they don't think about security when they get, their technologies or whatsoever, but it's very much important that people know that security is not by default, and security can be practiced. When you get something, you should implement security things. And to the extent of knowing that you can actually take security as a profession from a very young age, because I've seen seniors finally as struggling on where can we go and study cybersecurity, especially in South Africa. We have a lack of those, where can we study, what is it all about, and all those things. And I also know a lot of seniors who think security is also much about, pen testing, ethical hacking and all the stuff. I always get the question of, can you hack this Wi-Fi and whatsoever, Facebook account? But it is because there isn't awareness that security can be practiced, and security is something that we should be serious about starting from high school. I can confidently say within an African context, there isn't that awareness. Students, when you in grade 10 or grade 12, you ask them, what would you want to do in tech? They want to be software developers. They want to be, not the current one now, it's AI engineers, of which I'm also a victim, but but those are things that people want to do at the moment because they don't know that we can be, information security specialist, policy specialist, data governance and all those things. So now what I can say is that as cyber 12 is increasing, and I've seen the increase over the years with the number of recruitments and scholarships that they give out. But it will also be good that you also reach out to high school students, grade 10, grade 11, and also different reach outs so that when they get inspired by that one moment, as they continue within the years, they've already began conditioning their minds that we want to be security specialists, we want to go into cybersecurity. That would very much, investment in the younger ones would change the future drastically. And as we've been doing in South Africa, we have a challenge of the threats that we are facing now. It's one of the most targeted. It would very much make us a more secured country. Speaking on behalf of my fellow South Africans, it will really make us a better country in terms of security and technically. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. So start early. Yeah, definitely. Encouraging folks from a younger age, but also, again, to the point that multiple people have made thus far, which is it's not just about the technical role. Security familiarity and knowledge of frameworks is important across the board. Twambi, I'll open the floor to you if there's anything to add.
Thank you so much. I think a lot has been said by almost everyone, but maybe before I even begin, just to say thank you because you opened the door for us. But also to concur with everyone, I think people actually understanding the importance of these strategies, them seeing the benefits will actually push them to be participate. Because maybe, like Emmanuel said, people can't really relate to the cyber, the way it's framed, it's just maybe technical people, but non-technical people don't really see the visibility of their work in these challenges. And also on beginning early, not just university students will actually be important. But I even go further than that to say that even people in the grassroots, people who don't have these resources, because if we want a digitally transformed world, it means everyone has to be involved, and it means everyone also has to be involved in these challenges. So even people in the rural communities, people who don't have access to this kind of trainings, there can be a specific strategy developed for them to even participate and to see what's actually in the real world, despite what maybe they face in their communities. And lastly, maybe just having a structured post-alumni support where people, after they go through the strategy, what's next in store for them. It won't maybe necessarily be them getting resources, maybe funds or maybe some kind of opportunity, but some kind of arrangement whereby they can connect on a 20 other alumni. A proper structured network would actually keep people engaged, not just it being in the initial phase, but there's proper continuity of the strategy and there's even proper impact highlighted. And it's nice to see that alumni is actually engaged during these dialogues. So kudos to you and your team for all the work that you're doing in ensuring that there's a safe world and knowledgeable policy makers out there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. And absolutely, and agree. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yes, I just also wanted to add to say there are different things that motivate people. So I feel like also telling them the expected salaries or the job market that's out there in cybersecurity, I think they'll also be attracted to the same. Last time I checked, I think in 2024, there was about 100,000 deficit in cybersecurity professionals in Africa. So I feel like the market is too hot. So if we can also tell them to say, you know what, challenge yourself, jump into this, and see how marketable you're going to be. It's also going to be an encouraging thing to take. Thank you very much.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a good way to wrap this question, which has had a theme not only of access, right? Access and awareness, but also, an understanding of the impact you can have later, even if you're not from a technical background. So thank you all for your thoughts here. Really excellent. We are getting some questions from the audience, so I'll turn to those now. And same format, we'll open the floor to anyone who feels like they have an answer. A little bit of a fun one first. What was one unexpected challenge that your team experienced during a Cyber 912 competition, and how did you overcome it? I'll let you think about that for a second. As a competitor myself in New York at one point, I've already thought of several, but go ahead, Papama.
Yeah. I think one that jumps at me is, so we did the competition, I think, yeah, it was the one with the, diplomacy and political tensions and everything. I think because we were all very new to just the format of the competition, writing, putting together a policy document. So I was the only one who had like any previous, because I did a humanities degree, so I had experience in writing, essays, but the policy one took us by surprise. But the one thing was when we were writing our responses, right, we sort of went with a lot of long-term plans in terms of, how we're going to be responding. And I still remember this, one of the judges in the panel were like, okay, you guys have so many great ideas, for, future protections and all of these long-term plans and, changing, writing policies and all of those things. But what about the fire that's currently happening? That was like the biggest question. It was like, how are you guys, thinking about, talking to the press and the people and communicating and all of these things, but you have not put out the actual fire. Like we missed actual taking care of, the situation that is happening now. So I think that was like the key thing that stuck to me throughout the years. And it was like the biggest tip that I gave the UCT teams in the last 2 years of like, you need to think of immediate and long-term strategies. So I think that was the biggest surprise, for me. It sort of really pushed us to think outside of the box. In what we assumed was going to be very, linear situations, sort of like linear way of thinking, like there's an issue and this is what the response is, but you kind of have to think outside of the box, a little bit more creative, which was quite surprising.
Yeah, definitely. What can you do right now? What can you do tomorrow? What can you do 6 months from now? It's a lot of mental gymnastics that has to happen within the competition. Thanks for that. I see Emmanuel laughing. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, I was actually relating to what you're saying. I remember the time that we competed in Cape Town, that was 2022. The competition was fine the first day because we had already written our policy statement and all these things. But just after the escalation that night, we didn't sleep. So yeah, it's really, it takes a toll on your problem solving skills, your teamwork. I remember one of our team members, immediately after the escalation, they were now afraid to present the next day, so we had to now cheer them on, work together. So teamwork was really built. So teamwork really played a role. But I can say, yeah, it gets critical, especially after the escalation. Thank you.
Yes, for the audience, what Emmanuel is talking about, after the first round of competition where the students have had a few weeks to deal with the information presented, If they move on to the next round, they only get, I think, 1 night to deal with the escalating crisis presented to them. And often, the next day we'll ask when everyone went to sleep, and it's somewhere around 3 or 4 a.m. if they slept at all.
In 2022. There was no sleep.
I always found that to be a great bonding experience, and actually kind of reflective of real life, when these things happen, what takes priority, not sleep. So that's very funny. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Dwambi or Erwin, anything to add?
Yes, I would look at one of the things that we actually learned was teamwork and coordination. So when you're presenting, you have to open the same line and also be able to take up questions. So in our team, and funny thing was, same thing with Emmanuel, we had to come up with a way of us talking. So for example, when there's a question that comes in, it's supposed to be very proactive. So we had like hand signals on how we stand, on how our body language had like a tagline whereby if someone starts like this, they have no answer. And if someone starts like this, that means they're going to go next and respond, just to avoid us clashing when answering the questions. So it makes you to be very creative, to be a critical thinker with your teamworks. And it also gives you a reality of actually what happens in the workspace. I don't think most people know how to work with other team members and how to coordinate. It's a good entry point on what actually happens in the office world, and it's a good scenario for people to see what to expect when they go into the real world and in the workforce. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, more often than not, you're working with a team to solve whatever problem is presented in your career, and being able to make decisions, but also defend those decisions and coordinate with your team members on that justification. Super important. Not a bad strategy to have some hand signals. Erwin, I'll turn to you.
On my side, I will say that one of the things that really, impacted me, or in that sense, will be teamwork and soft skills. As when we went there, I was more technical, and someone who had won several competitions or hackathons, which were more technical, it's easier to go with that mindset. But I think that what I really got from that was the fact that soft skills sometimes can be better and greater than technical skills, and they will take you much further than where technical skills will take you, because we had to sit down the whole night. I remember when I was there with my teammates, I think it was like 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. We hadn't came up with anything solid, and we were just sitting there like it's that tough. But our ability to sit, communicate with each other, understand each other, reason together, and to be able to work around the same thing and come to the same conclusion, I can say that was something that was very good, during the competition. And also getting out of your own thoughts in the name of, we are in a tech competition, so let's be more technical, but going outside our comfort zone. I think that was, and balancing caffeine in our body and sanity. That was something that was, it was very good at that point of time.
Yeah, the daily battle. Thank you for that. So actually, this could be maybe a quick fire question. What's a skill you wish you'd had before entering either your current career, or we can say the competition as well, whether it be technical or a policy skill or a team working skill? What's one skill you wish you had before? Yeah, Papama, go ahead.
I think I wish I had developed, like before the competition, sort of like stronger, I don't want to say presentation skills, but like, I think more negotiation skills, right? Just kind of like being, confident with your points. I think I found it like one of the most challenging things, working as a group. Obviously, we sat down and we, managed to put this document together, but now having to actually, present it, I found that a bit challenging. So if I'd had that beforehand, I think the experience would have gone much better. But that is actually something that I sort of picked up and learned. Okay, this is a skill that I need, and I think also the policy writing skills, right? Because there were like the several aspects of it that are really quite key that you needed to, be sure of that you have. So perhaps if I'd been prepared, better prepared ahead of time, that would have been great. But now at least I know how to write like a policy, at least what a policy brief should look like.
Yeah, good to hear that you gained that skill then through it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll say mentorship is quite key when it comes to these things, because prior when we went in, I think the person who was like our coach hadn't been, in the competition before, what type of competition it was, and even just knowing how to write a policy brief. So I think within the competition itself, it's important that, even people who've been competitors before are like coaches to teams, right? Because you already know how it is and you've been through that process. So I think you're able to coach a lot better, right? I think you're able to bring a lot more to the team, which means the actual competition itself will be a little bit more advanced because the teams are better prepared and they know what's going on. So mentorship, I think, is maybe a key thing. I think it should be one of the suggestions I made earlier, just creating sort of this mentorship thing within the competition where you sort of keep people, past competitors, and have them be mentors to upcoming students. And yeah,
absolutely. So public speaking, policy writing, which is different than any other kind of writing you would previously done, but then also not only gaining mentorship but learning how to be a mentor, which is a different skill set altogether. Absolutely. I'll open the floor if anyone has anything else to add. Papama really covered some good ground there.
Maybe before I jump in, just to get clarity, is it a skill that we wish we would have learned prior to the competition, or one that we've learned and we are applying in our day-to-day work?
I will leave that up to you. Original question was, what's a skill you'd wish you'd had prior to either the competition or entering the cybersecurity workforce? But also would love to hear about any skills you learned that you're now applying. So I'll leave that to you.
Personally, I would speak on the communication skills. I work in a very technical role, as you already said. I deal with incident response. For example, we have an issue, we have sort of maybe an attack in the organization. Now, how do you communicate that to the end user whilst you are handling it? I feel like that was one of the critical things that I learned during the competition, to say, it's not about just fixing the computer. It's not just about fixing the problem, but you need to keep in the loop the key stakeholders that are beneficiaries of that system. So I believe that I learned how to apply communication, when to escalate an issue, and how to communicate. It's not just about communication. How do you give that information to the end user? So it was very, very good for me, and I still am applying it even now. Thank you very much.
I love to hear that. Yeah, often a question folks will get asked when presenting solutions in a scenario is, how are you communicating that? And also by what authority can you do that? So good to hear. Anyone else?
Yes, I think mine is the same as what they have shared, which was around policy. So being able to understand policies, how they are developed, how young people can participate in policy development, giving it input. So when I began, that was like the first time I was introduced to policies, and later on I also had to put in my efforts in being very strategic in actually getting more knowledge around policies. So maybe there's going to be a workshop on validating the policies that maybe that developing. I would participate in order to get more insights. So I think people in tech learn about technical skills, but they have no knowledge around the governance of tech. So that's huge gap actually affects how we work, how we implement, how we enforce, because we have a very huge gap skill in enforcing them. So everyone in tech should actually take an initiative to understand what they're working on, what they are promoting, what they are introducing before they even before they make a mistake rather. Yeah, thank you.
No, absolutely. And I love that perspective and point that you're making, right? Which it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. And thinking about what the impact is going to be on the other side, what the governance structure would have to be, super, super important, and something that I think, at least this competition tries to get to. Any other comments before I turn to a last question for you all?
On my side, I can say one skill that I wish I had would be engagement skills. Having to engage different parties or different people involved in in a scenario or an incident, because I think that will be one thing that resulted us in having a lot of struggles, being so indecisive on what we should focus on, technicalities or social or economic and all those things. So I can say that being able to engage each and every party that is affected by a situation or engagement as a whole was one skill that I wished I had, especially before the 7 and 12. And yeah, I think that's the biggest. For now, I can also speak for my teammates. That's what skill we wish we had before participating. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. So thank you all for your thoughtful answers there. I will close out with one last question from our audience, which feels like a really good way to end, which is, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self while you were still in university, what would you say?
I'll start. Is it like something related to just cybersecurity or just general?
I mean, up to you. The question seems pretty general, but the panel is about cybersecurity, so I will let you get that.
Well, personally, I think my advice to younger me, and perhaps like especially undergraduate me, would be to sort of not be so intimidated by all of these different technical concepts and things and different areas. So especially like specifically cybersecurity, I'd go back and tell myself not to think of it as just completely technical, right? That it is quite multidisciplinary, and perhaps that thinking of such things being maybe not for me because I'm not so technical might have been the reason why I'd missed out on so many different opportunities and things. And if I had sort of that mindset early on, right, to just kind of push myself, go in. There is room for you in all of these different spaces, you and your specific set of skills, experience. There's room for you to come in and make an impact, even if you're not going to be the most technically sound person, or you're not going to be the developer in the room, but your international relations is going to be relevant in a cybersecurity strategy challenge, because diplomacy, you understand relations and tensions between different countries. So I think that would be one thing for me, to just kind of be more open-minded regarding everything. At least look at opportunities that come at you and take it as a challenge.
Absolutely. Sort of what Erwin was mentioning earlier, don't let the imposter syndrome stop you. I think it's something we can all relate to. But you're so right and spot on that we all have different perspectives to contribute in the cyberspace and the technology industry. And sometimes it is that outside perspective that highlights a gap that wasn't seen before. Thank you for that. Whoever'd like to go next? Yeah.
To share mine, I would encourage my younger self to increase her exposure. I think when you're in university, it's a good place for you to explore different things before you stick to one career path, because at that point, you're not sure of what's actually in the world. And with the Cyber 912 Strategy Challenge, it gives a platform for people to explore different aspects in the cyber world, both technical and non-technical. So I would encourage people to actually participate and get a perspective. You need to know what you actually like. Because at that point, you have different things that you're learning and the different things that you definitely want to explore. So don't be afraid to try out things and increase your exposure and learn different skill sets. And you never know what's actually going to assist you or what you're going to like. In the end, you might think if you're more technical, but you're actually non-technical. Maybe you're non-technical, don't be more technical. It gives you options which are good for a young person to have. Yeah, I would say that much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yes, just to add on what Papa and Twambilili has said, I'd say I would advise myself to be brave. So if people are here and they are still in their undergrad, I'd say be brave. They say fortune favors the brave, isn't it? So when opportunities come your way whilst you're in undergrad, jump on them. I remember the time that we were preparing for Cyber 912 for Cape Town. My previous team members, they dropped out. But I truly believe that the job that I got after school directly relates to the skills and the exposure that I got from 912 in cyber in Cape Town. So whatever comes your way, they say if you want an omelette, don't be afraid to crack the egg. So take up any chance that comes your way. You lose nothing by participating, whether you win or lose, but you've learned from the experience. And whatever you've learned, it sticks with you and you're going to use it somewhere else. So you lose nothing in undergrad. Take the opportunities that come, take the risk, learn from it, move on. Thank you very much.
I love that, and a beautiful reminder. Erwin, would you like to close us out?
Yeah. I definitely like to tell my younger self something that, don't, as Bawama said, don't be afraid of all these, technical words. Don't be intimidated by people who ask you to hack their Wi-Fi's. Don't be intimidated by Wireshark that they will teach you in networking and all those things. But look at the other side, explore policies, because you don't know where you are going to end up. To tell him now that I ended up mostly in AI, and you have to know the AI policy framework, which also entails the security part of it. So I'd like to warn him, stop being afraid and dive into those policies and dive into that security, because it will land you in good places one day. In 2025. I think that's what I will tell that guy. Yeah.
Absolutely. The be brave, don't be afraid, and it's all connected. I love this point that a few of our panelists have made, that even if you don't expect to go into a technical career or even a policy career, you gain skills that are applicable after the fact, including teamwork, communications, and all of that as well. So thank you all so much. That is all the time we have for today. I just want to say thanks again to all of our past 912 competitors here on this panel, and also to our first panelists. Amazing discussions. It was a thrill to have you all, and looking forward to the next competition where hopefully all of you will come back as mentors, coaches, or judges. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn things over to Safa to close us out.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for guiding such a great discussion, and especially to our panelists for joining us across many different time zones to reflect on and also share their experiences in competing in the Cyber 912 Strategy Challenge. It really is so special to see how far you all have come in your careers and the different ways that each of you supports the development of more connected and more secure societies. Now more than ever, both organizations and governments really need to continue investing in education and training to realize our objectives in cyberspace and make the most of technological advancements. So just one final thank you to all our speakers today for joining us, and especially to our friends at the University of Cape Town for their continued partnership on all things cyber capacity building. If you are still looking to compete in a Cyber 912 competition or serve as a judge, registration is still open for our virtual New York City competition next month and our in-person competition in Monterey in November. Check out the Atlantic Council website for more details. In the meantime, we'll see you all next time. Thank you all so much.